Welcome to Embrace the Spiritual Podcast. Join friends Michelle and Dawn as they share tips on how you too can open your heart, raise your vibration, and reclaim your sovereignty. Hear what they have experienced and overcome in their spiritual journeys while navigating this expansive spiritual multiverse. Discover how they transform their soul lessons from ordinary into extraordinary.
Follow, subscribe, and share Embrace the Spiritual Podcast on all streaming services, including YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Go to embracethespiritual.com for bonus content. To book a quantum energy healing session with Dawn, visit her website, alchemy-sacredsound.com. And to book a quantum energy healing session or learn Reiki or Tuning Forks, visit Michelle on her website at energeticembrace.com.
Welcome back. And we are talking about our adaptive selves. How many times have you gotten yourself into situations that you have had to adapt to maybe something that just feels like I'm in the twilight zone because you can't believe that you just stepped into a room and things are a little, I don't know if I want to say helter-skelter, but they're just not ideal for what you imagined. And how do you deal with that? As I am an observer, I just observe. Sometimes it's better just to keep your mouth quiet than to engage, like when you enter a room and there are people who you really don't see eye to eye with, but you do love them and you want the best for them at all times. But the projecting of things upon you that you do not believe or adhere to in your life. What do you do? What do you do is the question. And when we're in those types of situations, you can always say no, like, I don't agree to that. And it doesn't have to be in a confrontational way. You can do it with love and say, that's not how I live my life. Or if it comes, my team was like, food. It always comes to food. I'm very food minded. I love to eat. You can always say no, especially if it's not something that you would put in your body. And, I'd rather go hungry than eat something that I know later on I'm going to regret. I've done that so many times, and I have started bringing food to places with family where I know I'm going to have an allergic reaction. I remember this one time my husband and I were going home, and it was like an hour and a half, maybe hour and 40-minute drive. And he was like, what is going on with you? And I was just like, I am in so much pain because of what I ate. And it was like, he's like, I can hear it moving through your digestive system. And I was just like, oh, it's moving all right. And I hope we make it home on time. We did, of course. But it's in those moments where, yes, you know what's right for you. And you don't have to compromise at times. If you know you're going to go someplace where the food is going to be not ideal, don't ingest it just because you think it's going to make the other person happy, because you will regret it later on. Take it from someone who has gone through it too many times and finally said, that was the last time that I did that. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. We have to bring our own food. And my husband finally, not that he finally agreed, it's just that it is a process when you're traveling and you have to bring food all the time. But we finally figured it out, what works for us. We always, have the to pack list and the food to bring list. And we always bring our Berkey because I love it. And I have to have filtered water. So that is one of my go-tos, because if the water is nasty, I can taste it. We've gone to some places and they're like, oh yeah, the water's good. And I'm like, nope, it's got this weird taste I can't even, or smell. And my husband has a hard time smelling, but if he can taste it, I know it's really bad. So you've been in those situations. What do you do? I know what I do. What do you do, Michelle?
Well, planning is key, isn't it? Right? We certainly adapt. We're talking about adapting in many different ways. And I certainly bring my own snacks. There's, even if I can't bring meal items, I at least bring snacks that I know won't upset my stomach, because nothing worse when you're traveling and something doesn't agree with you and you have to stay close to a bathroom. So I totally get it. I don't have the same water filter thing, but I kind of want one. So just saying. So I wanted to bring in the connection to our earlier episode about being your authentic self, because I think your adaptive self and authentic self, sometimes people think they're almost like two separate elements, but they're really interconnected. And what happens in my experience is it's not like you're one or the other, you're a balance of both. Until we went to do this episode, when we were talking about the authentic self, we were looking at in a silo, and now we're kind of looking at, okay, so we are trying to get to our authentic self. And I want to add kind of a part B to that, is to have our adaptive self and our authentic self closer in alignment. So I know when I was working, I won't give the name of it, but many people in office environments go through these tests where it kind of measures like how you respond to situations and personal situations, all of it. And it's trying to figure out kind of your working style, right? And the basic one just kind of tells you, here's kind of the environment you like to work in. And then in one of my workplaces, we did kind of a level 2 assessment of that same test. And it was really cool because I remember on one side, it would kind of say, here's your kind of authentic self. I don't think they use those words, but they did use the words about adaptive self. And it was really cool to see in some categories where maybe how we adapt to the situations is more in alignment with our authentic self, and some they're like almost polar opposites. So I think in this situation, there are environments or situations or circumstances where we are adapting further away from maybe what our authentic self would be. And it's kind of an interesting concept, because does that really mean you're being inauthentic? I don't think so. But the way I understand or look at it is your adaptive self is adjusting maybe how you would approach things to fit the situation. And sometimes, especially those societal situations, maybe you're in a group of people, whether it's a work event outside of the office or a social situation where maybe you have to adapt quite a bit. As an example, I'm naturally an introvert. I can be by myself. Dawn and I were joking about this the other day about you can just be my husband and I, and that's good. Like, you don't need a ton of people. Whereas typically extroverts like to be around a lot of people. That kind of fuels them. So if you think of just kind of those two labels, I guess, but everyone can kind of relate. An introvert versus an extrovert. An introvert recharges by being alone, and an extrovert tends to recharge by being with other people. And then they do need their quiet time to kind of reset. The reason why I bring up that specifically is I have adapted in social situations, especially with my husband's business, where it's a very social based business, that we go out in these events. I do adapt to being more social. And it's an interesting concept. I want to explore it on this because I know there's a lot of listeners that can relate to this. And, again, we don't judge. This is all about awareness, because I realized, here's what I've learned about that adaptive style, is that, especially as I've done more spiritual work and growth, the adaptive style of me is actually closer to my authentic self, because I actually will become very interactive with people that I trust, that people that I intuitively feel good about. So if I have to go in a situation where I know there's people that energetically I do not align with, I really don't want to interact with them, quite frankly, because that's out of alignment with who I am authentically. So it's interesting that there's an element of an introvert being extroverted in certain situations where some of it is you kind of put on a smile and be polite, so to speak. And so it's interesting to look at those situations a little differently and go, I want to spend time with people that I enjoy their energy or company. And so I've noticed that shifting in not feeling obligated to spend time or talk to people that I really don't align or connect with. And that is more authentic to myself. So I find when I go out in those situations, I'll tend to gravitate to a small number of people that I'm really comfortable talking to because I feel that trust and connection with. So I think that's probably a big one, introverts versus extroverts. Extroverts, my husband's an extrovert, so we've adapted and come together, right? It's helped me grow because he's in a way forced me to be in these situations that are out of my comfort zone. And so it's helped me grow to be out in those environments, because I think sometimes we do tend to hide in the safety of our own home, so to speak. And that could be with world events, whatever. We just want to look at what's in our box, but our soul's not growing. Our soul came here to grow and learn. And if you don't expose yourself to these other situations, which we may consider adaptive to what our natural is, maybe what we think our natural isn't as close to our authentic self as maybe we thought it was. And we're kind of being in a silo because we're trying to protect ourselves from a situation. So have a look at maybe ways that you interact with people and say, okay, how much of this is truly being adaptive and, putting yourself in situations. Maybe you have to go to an awards show and accept an award. You're terrified of public speaking, but you have to get up on stage and accept an award. You do it, right? You adapt to the situation and do it. And that doesn't mean you're being inauthentic. It just means, okay, I know where my maybe authentic self is, but I'm willing to step into this situation for this period of time and then come back in alignment. So I think that's an interesting concept, talking about this adaptive self, that I think we don't talk about enough. And even when we did the authentic self episode, I know for myself personally, I wasn't thinking of the adaptive self as this other element. We were just talking about authentic self, but we can kind of develop that adaptive self, and maybe we actually discover part of our authentic self in there that we didn't even know was missing, right? Maybe that situation has pushed and grown our boundaries to add an element and go, oh, maybe I'm actually okay in crowds, but maybe there's certain types of crowds. Maybe I've learned what kind of situations I enjoy being in versus not being in. Maybe it's small crowds versus big crowds. So yeah, I just wanted to add that little piece of, maybe from a work perspective, if you have some of these tools that you've participated in, these personality tests, use it to your advantage. Look at, where your natural state, I think that's more what they call it from the work ones, is your natural state. And is that truly where you want to be? Are we over adapting? Or are we maybe not adapting enough and pushing and growing ourselves to becoming more in alignment with what we called our authentic self?
Awesome. And I feel like this is really complicated. So because I can see it in so many different ways. My husband is an artist, and we do a lot of traveling to go to these art things. And there's a lot of times where, you have to schmooze with the people, and some people you get along with great. And then other people are just kind of like, whoa, you're coming on a little too strong and you need to back it up there. Artists can be extremely flamboyant, and it's like I can see a whole perspective. There's like the artists who are positive and glowing and you love them, and then there's the artists where they're like, life is horrible and I'm going to try to push it on you, and you're just like, no, stay away, And when you're meeting people and you're like we do a big group dinner almost every evening, and at times you're getting to know people, and there's times when you have decided, I really need to stay away from this person, and you're kind of edging away, trying to get into other conversations because this person is so over the top, and I hear crazy, and it does feel like really crazy energy. We got ourselves into a situation where there's this one person, and the person that they were at the show and the person that they were when alcohol were two different people. And it was so, I think, shocking to everybody, because even the people who get the people together and are really easygoing, they were like, this cannot happen again, because the inappropriate words and stuff that was said, and I really didn't partake in it because I was just like, this is not making me comfortable. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And there's times when we're meeting people and you don't know how they are, and then stuff is said. And there's times when you can say, hey, I'm not cool with that. Or if the person is drunk, you can say, I'm not cool with that, but they're just not going to get it. And then argument ensues. So really being adaptive to that situation is reading the room. Can you be honest with this person, or is it just not even worth it? And luckily, last year, we did not dine with them at all. Something had happened within the group, and he was kind of reevaluating what his art, but almost in a sneaky kind of way. And not Not really, because it's during a show, and when artists are trying to sell and they're engaging with customers, and you come along and you're trying to insert yourself into situations and ask about things, that's not the time for that. When it's downtime before show or after show, that's the time. And really not after show, because these shows are timed and the place is locked down. So you really can't stand talking to somebody, because security will come and go, you need to leave, grab your stuff. And if you forget something, they're really tough. They usually don't let you get something unless you are stranded. So if you forget your medication, hope you really don't need to take that. And if you need your car keys, usually you can tell them, hey, it's here. Would you mind going to get it for me? Or if they're nice enough. So, you really have to read the room on these situations. And it is uncomfortable, but we are growing because we learn, hey, I really don't want to be like this person, or hey, I really like how this person comes across and I want to be more authentic and that way. I was talking to a friend recently, and I just love how she is so reflective and genuine. And I thought, you know what? I would like to incorporate that more into myself, because I think we meet a lot of people and we are just not, even it's just like a second meeting. Like I was on the phone yesterday with somebody and I decided, you know what? I can go the extra mile and tell them to have a lovely day. It's simple, it's easy. And all it was words. And I could tell that she was smiling at the end because I could hear the happiness in her voice. So even though we're in uncomfortable situations, having uncomfortable conversations, you can always do that little flip of a switch and your words can make a huge difference. So always take a deep breath when you're in that uncomfortable situation and know that it will end, because it can't be forever.
That's a great example. I love it. Love it. So here's another take that I have on adaptive self. I kind of see it as being necessary for that survival, the social interaction, but we can do that while still maintaining our authentic self. So that's why I really want to stress it's not an either or. You can be adaptive without being inauthentic. Sometimes I think adaptive self, we may stretch what our values and beliefs are because of the situation we're in. But I think there's kind of, even Dawn's example of the food, right? There's some situations where you maybe have some non-negotiables. So as part of your authentic self, if a certain person behaves in this way, like doesn't matter the situation you're in, you won't put up with it, you're going to say something. But I think equally there's the adaptive side of us that sometimes it's not appropriate to make a scene in the situation you're in, and ends up being kind of the respectful thing to do, because sometimes we might think we're being authentic in saying what we feel about the situation, but what if it's at the expense of somebody else? And it's a tricky one. I tell you, there is no concept that stands alone. These are so interwoven, and it's almost like, and this is where you can't have judgment in it, because all we can do is learn and observe and say, this is how I handled the situation. And it may not have been how I handled the situation if it's one-on-one, but sometimes people feel such an overwhelming need to correct somebody. Maybe it doesn't have to be done in public. Maybe you can have that conversation privately and still kind of remain authentic by sharing your thoughts about a situation. But sometimes that adaptive self maybe is like, okay, do I need to do it when we're out in a group of people? Probably not. Maybe you could have a little compassion with the situation. But, if somebody's being physical or, verbally attacking someone, then yeah, there's obviously situations where you're not going to put up with it and let somebody behave that way, like in a drunken stupor and you're, spewing things about a person. Like that's just not acceptable. So I think that adaptive self also kind of looks for that external validation and approval. So when we're in our authentic self, we're not necessarily looking for that, but sometimes our adaptive self, we want that external validation and approval. And I guess that's okay. Sometimes you need the recognition in a big group setting. Maybe that's just the way, and normally you wouldn't need that type of validation or recognition. So I don't know, like even as I'm talking about this, I'm going, it's just so multifaceted. Like, how do you even describe this really? And I think it's just an awareness of adaptive self, but I think also that we're constantly redefining our authentic self. And maybe that's where the interwoven part of that is difficult to explain, because our authentic self isn't just this one thing that we are in this moment. I think it shifts as we shift and grow, that how our authentic self shifts and grows, because we learn what values and beliefs maybe have been defining what we think our authentic self is that no longer exist, because maybe us adapting by becoming part of a different, maybe spiritual community helps us see things differently, right? Like even Dawn and I meeting and people that we've come to become really good friends with, we met because we were part of a group and we needed to be part of that group that we're no longer part of. And that's okay. And guess what? I think on some level, we adapted to stay in the group longer than what we maybe would have, right? So we're probably stretching our authentic selves a little bit, just trying to see if maybe something would come around. But sadly, we've been judged for that as well and lost what we thought were friends. And that saddens me because, as we essentially step more into maybe our authentic self, it wasn't a matching alignment to what other people thought we should be behaving like, or not even behaving maybe, but maybe behaving, I don't know. I mean, I can't totally speak for other people, but because we chose to stand true to ourselves and not allow ourselves and others to be treated a certain way, that friends fell away. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I think many of us have been in those situations where as we step into that, shift from being too adaptive in a situation to more of our authentic self, friends are going to fall away because they could be jealous that they don't have the courage to leave. That could be it. Or, other people still feel in alignment with teachings or other people that you've walked away from, and they're on their journey. I mean, we can't help it. And I send them love. And it would be nice to be, there's certainly some friends that have stepped away on their choice. That is, I'm sad that has happened, but that's their choice and that's okay. And I know that, in that specific scenario, we've brought the adaptive self a little closer to the authentic self. Because sometimes I think if we're living too much in that adaptive self, we tend to allow things to be kind of swept under the rug, or think, I don't think they're normally like that, so I'll kind of let that slide. And then you'll see it again. And then sometimes you might be thinking, I'm the only one seeing it that way, until you talk to other people and go, okay, I'm not the only one seeing it this way. Other people are seeing it that way. So it's okay. Nothing is a mistake. They're just all learning lessons. And I'm grateful for the time, because I'm grateful for, beautiful friends that have come, I love Dawn. She's a sister I never had, and you can pick your friends, not your family, so to speak. And, I couldn't choose a better friend to be walking this journey with.
You're making me I get emotional when you say beautiful things, and I love you so much. And yeah, it is, because we really did have connections with the people that we met, and I love them dearly, and I send them love every single day. But I've had probably thousands of friends. And if it is time for them to move on, it is their choice. I will still send them love. And one of the beautiful things about me is I become really annoying when the friendship is meant to be over. And so I know that my annoying part, and I don't know if it's like my team just clicks on a button, but I will piss you off by what I say, what I do, because my authentic self is really on me. If you don't like it, tough. And I can see where situations were ending, and that's okay. I'm okay with it. There's a friend of mine who I don't see anymore because I changed a lot and she just didn't resonate with me, and I still love her and I love her children and I think about her all the time, not in a creepy way, but it was time to go. I went more holistic based and she went another way. And we just weren't meeting. I was not saying anything that she wanted to hear, and I couldn't not be me. So it is what it is. And that's okay. We are doing things that we are meant to in that time and space. And it is hard to not be judgmental upon yourself, but you know what? You have to be okay with it because we are our worst critic, and sometimes friendships just do fall apart. And I, feel like hopefully the timelines will meet again because I do love these people very dearly, but it is what it is. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm not going to apologize for my behavior. And we were definitely more adaptive than I feel that we should have been. I have been looking at other retreats, and they are way different. The scheduling, the timetables, even the payment. And I think they are more aligned with the people who we are now than, what the situation we were. And I'm having like a deja vu, and seeing a timeline of something happening. So if you're the person who's going to reach out in that timeline, it's okay. We are open to conversation. We are forever changing. And, the Michelle and I today is not going to be the Michelle and I tomorrow or even a year from now. And I hope that we can do this because I was thinking about it. I'm like, I wonder if we could do this for 10 years. I'm like, it would be really awesome if we could, because we would totally grow and people would be like, I can't believe, I think about our first episodes and us talking like, I'm so not that girl anymore. And I know you aren't that woman anymore.
I know. Oh, so true.
But it's a beautiful process, and you, our listeners, get to witness it and hear it. And we do love and appreciate you. And I don't know if we got this episode across because we are ever evolving, ever changing. And authentic me today might not be authentic me tomorrow, but it's all okay. As the world shifts, we shift with it. And as we are shifting, we are growing. And don't forget that. We are growing. And when we leave here, we're going to be even more different than when we were here. And we will be our really true, authentic, energetic selves. So don't be too hard on yourself. Love yourself as much as you love those that you interact with, as I love Michelle.
So much love. So much love. I think the last couple things that I want to share about this topic is around that judgment. We adapt, we grow, and sometimes people may think they're being judgmental, or maybe, we might feel we're being judgmental, but there's a difference between something coming across as judgmental versus standing up for your beliefs and saying that it's not okay to treat people or me a certain way. So if you think that's judgmental, that's on you. That's not on me. And at the end of the day, whether you feel you're operating from your adaptive self, your authentic self, find the joy in the situation. Even if you have to adapt and you're in a situation that, yes, you'd rather be at home and not in this group situation, find the joy in it. Maybe find that one person that you really connect with. And sometimes, like Dawn said, you have to be in those groups where you feel like you're adapting, because that's how you learn about other people. And you might find that person that you're really in alignment with, go, oh, I didn't know that you felt that same way that I maybe do from a spiritual perspective. And you might not find out about that until you're in that situation. So find that joy and just have that curiosity about the situation. And being adaptive isn't being wrong. It doesn't mean you're being inauthentic. You're just out there figuring out the world from a different aspect of yourself and, finding those things that resonate with you. And at the end of the day, embrace your uniqueness.
Beautiful. And I was just going to say the other thing I could think of when you were talking was do the right thing. Because there's times when somebody needs to have a voice where they're being, belittled or beat up. Call 911. I am a 911 caller when I see something, because I've been in those situations where they wait or they're like, it's going to get better. And it never does. Sometimes you need that outside force to change the situation, especially when it comes to children. If you feel like there is trafficking going on, please alert somebody. We need to end this situation that is happening where the sex trafficking for all people, it's not right. I don't consent to it, and neither should you.
Exactly. Don't adapt to the point where you are swung so far out of alignment of what you feel to be true and how things should be in situations. Absolutely don't ever get to that point. If you see something that is happening that is not okay on many levels, it's okay to stand up to it. It's okay to stand up for yourself. It may not be the popular thing to do. I think sometimes we adapt in friendship situations, work situations, and it's at the expense of our joy and the expense of our soul. And that's not okay. So ultimately, surround yourself with people who support you and accept you for who you are. That's stepping towards your authentic self. And engage in activities that bring you joy and fulfillment, because that's what we need in our lives. Follow, subscribe, and share Embrace the Spiritual podcast on all streaming services, including YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Go to embracethespiritual.com for bonus content. To book a quantum energy healing session with Dawn, visit her website, alchemy-sacredsound.com. And to book a quantum energy healing session or learn Reiki or Tuning Forks, visit Michelle on her website at energeticembrace.com.
Infinite love and gratitude. Thank you for joining us.